This is one of our spirit schools, ministered by Gustave Leroux. Please enjoy it. Know that it will take you deeper, higher, and wider into Yahweh. Please subscribe and have a great day.
Father, we just want to thank you that we get to, because of the blood of Yeshua, because of that portal that was opened through what Yeshua did on the cross, that dimensional shift that's taken place many, many years ago. We get to go in as we get born from above. Beginning to understand now that we were never born again. We were born from above. That we are just returning back into the place where we have resided for eons before we were sent into the womb. Beginning to understand that there's dimensions of revelation that was lost because of the fact that we were bound to our soul. That freedom that was created through the word of Yahweh that divided soul and spirit opened up my spirit man, who I am, not my spirit man, me, to go in as a spirit, to overshadow the kingdoms of the earth as one with governance, one with authority in Christ. We're beginning to understand that I live and move and have my being in Him. And as that spirit being, I begin to overshadow my soul and my body to bring your full glory into creation, to bring your full glory into place. So, Father, we're beginning to understand that we are spirit beings. And as that image that we were created in begins to take form in creation, things begin to change. We're looking at nations beginning to change because suns are rising up. Beginning at cities, states, businesses, families, just things in the earth changing because suns are rising up. The call from creation to suns have been answered. And slowly but surely we're taking the grounds that was given to us to run with back. Because we are reminded that Satan has occupation of it because we did not use the space. Everything Satan has in hand is being taken back. He's losing grip. So, Father, we want to honor you and praise you and absolutely worship you. Thank you that we are a company of people that says, yes, we are the Zion company, Father. We are the ones that run with all that you've opened up for us. Father, we love you, we praise you, and we absolutely honor you, my King. You're majestic. In the name of Yeshua. Amen. Okay. Well, just so, by the way, I shared with you guys already, we had an incredible week. I mean, Pan, you were there, right? She was there for the whole week. I was there just for a couple of days. I don't feel to say that I want to go there for a whole week. You know, that's a lot of time away from my family. I wouldn't say I'm addicted to my family, but that's the glitch in my download if I'm not with them, you know. Just spending a night alone in a hotel room. Now, first of all, I hate hotel rooms. Being alone in a room without my wife and my kids there, it's just excruciating. I went to bed, I don't know what, I think I went to bed at like 8 o'clock. And I slept right through until about, well, I didn't sleep right through. I was out, and there was a noise going on. I was like, what the heck's going on with these people? Very noisy city. But anyway, it's just always strange for me to be away from my family. That's why I don't like to go to a hotel. I like to stay in someone's house, you know, where there's at least some fellowship. Anyway, but I had an incredible time, you know. Ian Clayton, one of my main mentors that I absolutely honor and love. Just engaging with him, you know. I love it when he introduces me to other people. He always, it's the way he does it is very interesting. Oh, Gustave Leroux, he does the same stuff as what we do, and it really honors me, you know, that he does that, because he is not that I needed acknowledgement, but he acknowledges me as one of his students, you know, and that really honors me. Of course, Samantha and Grant, that I love, I honor and respect, they were there. Jane and Stevie are very good friends of mine that I absolutely love. And then we met a new lady called Lindy Masters. She's a South African, lives in England, and of course, just absolutely fell in love with her spirit. A powerful, powerful woman of God. It was just great to be in the midst of such incredible leaders. You know, and of course these men are unknown to the church world. And I love that. Because for some reason the church world thinks that if you don't have a 5,000 seated church, then you're not a leader in the church. And we're beginning to understand the leaders in the church are the ones mostly nowadays in the pews. You know, the leaders are not the guy with a mic. Well, I want it to be like that because that's the apostle. Well, no, it's a mandate on your life. It's what the Father has engaged you with, that has opened you up, that you begin to start doing things in creation. We're also beginning to see that it's not so much about How many times you go to church nowadays? Eh? It's about what you do in the Spirit. It's about what you carry as a Spirit being. And it's really just that shift, beginning to understand who we are. And that's where the church is at. It's a great place to be. I say the church, I always say the church and the ecclesia, we know it's the same thing. But our perception of the church is that Jesus is in me. And then the perception of the ecclesia is Jesus in me and I am in him. It sounds the same, but it's not. Because if I understand that I'm in him, I begin to understand what I carry and who I am. But if I just think he's in me, then I always see myself as just a sinner that's always going to be a weakling, that's always going to struggle. But when I'm in him and he's in me, it changes things slightly. Because if I'm in him, then that means that I'm seated in heavenly places. Now the church believes that and quotes that as scripture, but they don't walk in it. Because we don't shift from this side of the veil. And the ecclesia, I know there's no difference between the two. The ecclesia literally has the understanding that when I get born from above, that rebirth, now it's not a rebirth like we think in our Greek minds. I'm not a baby. This birth does not calculate me from the beginning again. This birth sets my spirit man free to come in his full capacity. And in the full capacity that my spirit man comes in, it overshadows my soul and my body, and it's connected or inside of Christ, which is the Word. That's where Hebrews 4:12 comes in, saying that we have used the Word of God to divide soul and spirit, bone and marrow and joints, thoughts and intent of the heart. To set your spirit free, because that's what you need to become, right? And that's where we begin to understand what is happening in the church right now. We are starting to operate as spirit beings, and in that full capacity, we are carrying a multitude of value. Now, I want to share this, and I've probably shared this a million times, but it really, have you kind of understand what I mean when I say you're a son and you're operating beyond the veil. It's different than just being a Christian on this side, not understanding your spirit. The spirit being that gets to live and move and have your being in him. So it's actually an example that Ian Clayton gave on one of his recent teachings, where he said that there was a farmer in New Zealand praying desperately for rain because his crop and his animals were dying, and if it didn't rain at a specific time of the year, they were going to die and he was going to lose everything. So in his fervent prayer, the father was about to answer the prayer. Now you say, well, if the father said he was going to answer the prayer, why didn't it rain? Because the prayer was meant to be answered by a son. Now you have to understand the difference between a son that operates in the kingdom of heaven and a believer on this side of the veil. A believer on this side of the veil, with his faith, he draws God closer and the gates open. A son operates in his mandate as one with dominion and authority over creation. You guys are looking at me with a tone in your voice. So the son gets frustrated because there's rain coming, and he wants to take his family out on a day out. So without going into the kingdom of heaven, to get the blueprints, knowing what the Father's heartbeat is for that day, what's your mandate for the day, he goes into the courts, stop the rain with the authority he carries as the son, and because of who he is, there's no rain, because that's what he legislated as a son. So you have to remember, now the farmer has lost his land, his animals died, and his prayer wasn't answered. The son is immediately responsible for everything that happened to the farmer. Because if you want to have dominion, if you want to have a responsibility, then you have to carry that responsibility in its full force. Right? That makes sense, right? So when I say we are sons, when you step beyond the veil and you become a son, there's great responsibility. And of course, we're beginning to understand, as Spider-Man's father said, with great power comes great responsibility. Right? So we're beginning to understand who we are, and slowly but surely, who we are is establishing the change that creation is needed. Now you might say in your heart, well, God, Jesus is God, He's the foundation, God is everything, He must come do it because He's God. Okay, but he made it very clear in the very beginning. He said, let us make man in our image and give him dominion and authority over all of creation. Now, remind yourself something. If you go to google.com this or dictionary.com, sovereignty also means, not sovereignty, dominion also means sovereignty. Oops. So God gives us sovereignty over creation. That means that he wants us to govern it, right? Now, part of governing creation is working and understanding the court system of heaven. Now, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. I've been engaging with this for 8 years, and I still have a glitch in my download regarding it. It's still not something that's clear to me. My spirit man is operating in these courts for the nation all the time, understanding it, but my soul is not allowing my spirit to pour the revelation in because there's no grid in my understanding for it. If that makes any sense. So I understand the very measure of it, but even Ian, if I listen to him talk, there's not full understanding of everything that's taking place. Now, because it's a slow process of learning, because we have to eliminate the soul that's I do not say eliminate the soul. You must align the soul's gates with what the Spirit's pouring in. And that's a process of change, because I have to change my belief system. And that's not an easy thing to do. I've been conditioned to believe certain things, and now the Father is bringing in revelation that I'm not conditioned to. So I'm going to instantly want to reject it. So we understand the courts of heaven. The first court is the mobile court, and that's what we did last time I was teaching, which could be a very long time ago. Right? Because we stopped this meeting on Fridays and gave it a break a little bit to hear what the Father wanted to say. And I felt that I needed to shift it to a Sunday night. So that's where we are now, 5 to 7. So we're going to see how this goes. And the last time I ministered here, it was on the court, the mobile court. I don't want to touch base too much on it, but the mobile court comes out of Isaiah 1, and not Isaiah, Ezekiel 1, Ezekiel 10. Basically, the idea is that because Yahweh is legal, not illegal, but how can I say this? He operates in a governmental way. Everything is done legally. If there's legal access in any way, fashion, or form, Satan has the right. Although you might say, well, Satan has no rights. Well, if there's legal access, he has the right to bring an accusation. And he cannot go into the kingdom of heaven, so there has to be a place within this sphere for him to make an accusation. So if you listen and understand, Ezekiel 1, Ezekiel 10 talks about a mobile throne, which we understand is a mobile court. So it's a mobile throne that comes down into the atmosphere where Satan brings accusations against the Son. If you understand what happened with Job, he was accused, and in his accusation there was no one standing in the gap. And everything that was brought to the table had to come into fruition until he realized, wait, this is a court case. What I'm going to do is I'm going to gather all my information, and I'm going to present this case to Yahweh. When he did that, everything was restored to him. Why? Because the sons have dominion over creation. The sons have dominion over the earth. So when Satan brings an accusation and there's no son standing in the gap, and whatever the accusation is, whatever the request is, has to be granted until there's a son. Once the son steps in, then everything is nullified. You guys understand that? Now, I mean, we go into detail, so if you want to know more about the mobile court, you don't understand it. I've got several teachings on it. Ian's got several teachings on it. I know that Justin Abraham has some really nice teachings on it as well. It's always good to have a variety of teachings regarding one subject. I know that Henderson, what's his name? Robert Henderson, he gives a very simple explanation for the courts out of his own revelation, which is great. And so I would urge you to do that. Don't just have one source of revelation coming in. Understand that revelation is progressive. So progressive revelation means he's got a portion, he's got a portion, he's got a portion, and you bring these portions together as a puzzle that fits in, and everything explodes in insight. So we've done the mobile court, and then one of my favorite is the court of the angels. Now, for me personally, I know that there's much more to the court of the angels as what I've engaged up to this point. But every time I operate from engaging with the seven spirits, My only encounter with this court, the court of angels, is going in to have angelic beings assigned to the mandate given to me. And I've had several different angels assigned to me, and the mandate was always given to me out of the court of war. So what I understand the court of angels is there's many different mandates regarding creation, regarding cities, states, our nations, smaller portional things that we can change. So we go into the court, they will show you what needs to be shifted, show you what needs to change in creation, and then send you from the angelic court into the court of war to find a strategy on how to deal with these things. For me personally, how it's worked for me is I would be engaged with the seven spirits, a specific spirit. For example, I'll engage with the Spirit of the Lord, and it would take me into creation, and I would find a mountain that's occupied by a dragon or a giant. There will be a process, and I would go from there into the court of war, where I will engage with the Spirit of Might, who is the chancellor in that court, with different men and women in the earth today, and they will give me a strategy on how to deal with that specific case. And from there, I will be assigned sometimes a legion of angels. Sometimes I would just be given a sword out of that court. Sometimes I would go for different training to have a greater understanding of what this change will bring to the nation or to the city that is happening. And so there's much that needs to be understood, but in the same breath, it's not that I can, okay, let me quickly go to Moses 19, verse 17. And get all the information I need from out of the courts. It's a going back into every encounter you have to have a greater revelation, understanding that you're in Christ. And I love what Ian's been doing over the last couple of months. He's given a focus point. Whenever you encounter, whatever encounter you have, you want to base it on 12 things. It is you living, moving, having your being in Him. Just of the righteousness, joy, and peace, which is Holy Spirit, way, the truth, and the life, which is Yeshua, justice, judgment, and holiness, which is the Father. So that's your judgment to any encounter that you have. If any of those 12 is not an encounter, step back out and then change it in the alignment that will bring all of that back into the picture, if that makes any sense. So we don't want to engage outside of Yahweh. That's Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh. So that is the fullness of God. Anything outside of Him in any fashion or form is going to lead you into deception. And we have to understand this is really important. Everything I'm teaching now, you might not find word for word in the Word, in our perception of the Bible. But we also begin to understand that that's a measure of the Word. Right? It's a measure. It's just a small portion. It's, a matter of fact, a third of a greater, much greater outpour of the word of Yahweh. So we have a small portion here, which is the Logos. Within the Logos, you have milk, meat, and word. Milk, meat, and mystery. Then you have and of course within the Logos, you have that which is written, but you also have that which is spoken, and you also have that which is living. But within the Rhema, you also have the same thing, because there's Rhema that is written down. Right? So there's much that's spoken into the atmosphere, but it's written down. That is what is illuminated to you. But then in that which is spoken, you also have a dimension of what's been released in the atmosphere by saints, by Yahweh Himself, by prophets, by the angelic in different realms, by the living letters from out of the kingdom of heaven, from all the different kingdoms, different realms that's available to us. There's much spoken, and because we are spirit beings, we get to go into it. That opens another realm of the word that we haven't even touched base yet. And then we also begin to understand that we have the living word, which is, of course, in the kingdom of heaven, where Yahweh in His full force operates from. We get to go there and engage at that level. That's where the revelation and mysteries are coming from, because as a spirit being, I have infused knowledge that has come as I was created out of Yahweh's fullness. That's something I've carried with me, but because I was birthed into sin and bound by my soul that was ordered by the world, taught by the world, governed by the world, and established by the world, I have a what? revelation. So the process is being changed, and my spirit's regaining all its knowledge by living, moving, having its being in that kingdom, and of course pouring and aligning my soul and my body with the fullness of that glory. So it is a process. And this need to understand it. So out of the court of war, this is where the strategies are released and given to the sons of God regarding cities, territories, tectonic plates, planets, solar systems, galaxies, and the universe is given to the sons. I want to remind you that we are not just called to bring salvation to the nation. That's a great idea, and that's part of what we're doing. It's part of what we're called to. But the way we are evangelizing is not the way the Father intended it. We are called through the alignment that He's given us to align creation. When creation is aligned, everything else falls into place. When we as sons start walking creation as glorified beings, walking as signs and wonders, then people are going to run to Yeshua. It's happening in different nations already. People are seeing things that is supernaturally impossible. You know, there's a gentleman that makes a statement in one of his teachings. He says he wanted to show his kids the tree. He wanted to master the tree. And as he went too close to the tree, he fell into the tree. Now, how to explain that? He fell into the tree as a spirit would walk through a door or a wall, so he fell into the tree. He was inside of the tree. Now, I don't know about you, but that's being a sign and a wonder. You might say, well, that I need more evidence than just you saying that, because we cannot even begin to fathom something like that. But that's where we are at the Ecclesia. There's supernatural things happening all over the world. People are literally translating from one nation to another. I listen to Ian and then speak. There are people that can walk through walls, people that can shift into their spirit to such an extent that they cannot pick up physical things with their physical hands, because they are a spirit being overshadowing the natural, and it's shifting into different realms. Now, we need to understand we have the capacity to govern creation. So it's not just about you leading someone to Jesus, although it is. So as we become sons and daughters, and that's mature Christians, mature believers, our focus changes because we see a bigger picture. We want to reach one-to-one, which is not a bad thing, because at a certain level in your walk with Yeshua, that's a good place to be. One-on-one evangelism, just engaging with everybody, talking to them about Jesus. And I still do that on a daily basis. Whoever I talk to, it's inevitable. Have you ever had that conversation? Doesn't matter who you talk to, they're going to figure out if you're a Christian, and then you're going to ask them whether they are saved or not. Or you want to pray for them, you want to prophesy over them. It's just going to happen, not because I'm trying, because it's who I am. But we're understanding that once everything, all the bigger picture is falling into place, things change and align. When things align and comes into the position it's supposed to be in, then everything else just falls into place. That's kind of where we are now. That's what the court of war brings us. It brings us to that place where things start falling into place. It is where the counsel of war is given to the sons on what to do and how to do it and where to do it. Who receive the scrolls of victory. This is how the Father wants you to show, to reveal to you the things that you are coming in petition for has been given to you as a son, and you have full victory over it. Right? We understand in the court of war there's other people that you will be able to counsel with regarding strategy. Now, I know this is weird because we, in our natural capacity as human beings, we can't perceive that there's other people that can come into the court of war while I'm in the spirit realm engaging there to come and give me strategy. And now let me remind you, the Satanists do that all the time. Satanists have meetings in the atmosphere without anybody knowing it. All the time. It's called astral traveling. Now my understanding is that they're not doing it with their souls, with their spirits, they're doing it with their souls. Which means they have full revelation of what they're doing. So there's a silver cord attached to their spirit man that just gives life when their spirit man is not functioning. So the spirit man gives life, and that silver cord is attached to the soul. The soul leaves the body, and the body is in a dead state, or sleeping state, and they have meetings regarding what, and they're from all over the world, gathered into one place. So that's the perversion of the original, and we need to begin to do the original. Right, so we can't get freaked out by this stuff. Well, where's that in the Bible, brother? Where's your car in the Bible? You know, just get real. If you want to associate one with the truth, then you have to associate everything with the truth, right? You can't say that if it's not in the Bible, it's not a truth, because that is not true. Because according to the Bible, Jesus never went to the toilet. But that's not true. Just because it's not in there doesn't mean it didn't happen. Now you might say, well, we have to keep a line. You're walking on a very thin line with teaching like that. But we have to get out of our box. Because what we've taught up to this point is not the full gospel. It's not the full truth. Because he says that the truth makes you free. So the church over the last 2,000 years is still not free. Someone's lying, or someone's doing something wrong. Let me tell you, my God's no liar. So we're doing something wrong. So we want to keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. That's where the cuckoo train starts passing by. Right? Okay, we have the court of scribes. So we have the mobile court, the court of angels, the court of war, the court of scribes. This is where the records of you are kept. This is, and I would go as far as to say this could be one of the most important courts you want to enter into. Right? You want to find out what you are destined for. What has been recorded regarding who you are. Because it's recorded and it was read, you agreed, you were sent into the womb, and now you have to know on this side of the veil what you need to do. But you can't find out on this side of the veil, you have to go beyond the veil. First one is the record of what you came out of heaven with the testimony of your life. So that's what I was just talking about. So you're sent into creation with a testimony of what needs to be done. I think you understand that. Okay, it's not about who you have to marry. It's not about who your parents were. It's about what you decided you were going to do. So you're birthed into a big fat mess. Most of the time, right? 90% of us are born into a big fat mess. Sometimes we're lucky enough, sometimes not. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really matter, right? We have two twins, and they're both born out of the same mother. Logically, probably twins if you're born out of different mothers. And the parents are both alcoholic and drug addicts. Overwhelming, they're poor, they have no money. But the one son becomes exactly the same as the parents. The other son becomes a doctor and very successful financially. His life's completely different than theirs. And when they asked these twins, why did they turn out the way they do, they both gave the exact same answer. The one says, well, what did you expect? Look at my parents. The other one says, well, what did you expect? Look at my parents. Wow. So it's really up to you. It's a decision you make. So it's not about who your parents were and how you were raised. I mean, I should not be in the position that I am according to how my parents lived and who my parents were. So I had to make the right decision to get back to what was written for me before I was sent into the creation. So I just want to make it clear for you, right? Then you have another scroll that you need to engage in. It is what you have done. Have you done your own thing? Have you done what you were supposed to do? Or have you just do the things that they told you to do? Now you understand, the things that they told you to do is good things. It could be leading people to Jesus. It could be all kinds of great stuff. And it sounds good, and it is good. But if you do only what they told you to do, or you only do what you want to do, you're not doing what you're called to do. Right. But in the same breath, remind yourself that Yahweh will put his desires in your heart. But because of our desire to please man, we shift away from the things we want, because it's not always aligned with our pastor or our spiritual father or our mentor's call. So they want to align you with certain things that they think will bless you and propel you and teach you and train you, which eventually it will, but you cannot get stuck in your training. And understand, a policeman can't get stuck in his training, because then he'll never be on the actual police force. We have to move on from our training. And so if I move away from my training, I no longer do what my pastor and what my leaders expect of me according to what they have established my call to be. Most of my mentors told me that my call is to the youth. I never felt drawn or called to the youth. Now, in the beginning, to please them, that's what I did. I ministered in the school, and it was great, it was powerful, and I still love the youth, don't misunderstand me. But I always had a drawing to teach the sons and the daughters of Yahweh that were already in ministry. Now, I didn't have that qualification, but that was what I was drawn to. So I had to make a decision when I saw my scroll because it was different than what I've done. You know, a big part of my ministry was a wrestling ring, and it was always catered for the young people and the young people in the church, but it was catered for the whole church. And there would be a little kid in the ring, and he would have a mic, and he would start praying, and he would just stand around with his bag on his back. He wouldn't have a mic yet. And then all of a sudden, doubt would come into the ring. And fear, and hate, and murder, and violence, and lust, and perversion, and drug abuse, and all these wrestlers would come in and start beating him up. And they would beat him into a pulp. Eventually he's half dead, he can't stand, he just crawls, and he falls on his knees, and he screams out, God, give me faith. And then of course I come running into the ring as faith, and beat the daylights out of everybody, throw them all out the ring, and then start preaching. I wrestle blood against flesh and blood. That was a lot of fun, and it had an extreme results in evangelism, and it was very powerful. But that wasn't what I was drawn to in my knowledge of what I'm called to. That's something I did because, well, we had a ring, and that was something I could do. I was a professional wrestler for 15 years, and it was just a tool that could be used, and it was really pushed by my leaders. And it was fun, but I realized now that was not. Now you can say, well, maybe it was for that time. Maybe it was for that time, but if I was already in my position as a son, that time would never have been. So am I sorry that that time was? No. Was I climbing stairs towards that place? Probably. So I'm not saying that your training is not valuable, but move on from your training. I think that's just where I'm going with this. Right. The third scroll dictates your maturity of responsibility in the heavens and rewards you receive when you go there. There are two books, one with your name on it and one with your works. Every thought and every intent of your heart. Now this is something we don't particularly like, but we have to remind yourself that the Father has given you multiple calls. On my scroll, I have different positions in different kingdoms and different realms. Right? In this realm, the kingdom of earth, I have a responsibility to take back what belongs to us as sons. In the physical earth realm, I have a responsibility to teach sons and daughters of Yahweh the revelations poured into what we're doing right now. That's called spirit schools. In the kingdom of heaven, I have governance over states within the United States. I have governance over nations within states within South Africa and Europe. And that's things that I need to govern. And I govern them from out of the kingdom of heaven. So there's many different aspects of your scroll that you need to be engaged. And you can really only start engaging the fullness of it when you operate from out of the heartbeat and the four faces of Yahweh. You guys okay? I know that this stuff sounds a little bit over the top, especially if this is the first time you hear anything like this. But it's our responsibility to understand, in this court of scrolls, there's much that you could get to understand and go into. And it's all written according to who you are to become, what you need to engage to become that, and how you need to open the things to understand. It's not about your works, although it is about your works. You're not pleasing God by what you do, but the things you do, according to what's on your scroll, will eventually please Him to such an extent that you will find not just the treasures that He wants to give you, but the inheritance opens up. Does that make any sense? Are you guys okay? The courts are there to take you to deeper levels of maturity. That's always the Father's desire. You got the court of chancellors. The chancellors are the sons of God. That was in the first creation, and with Adam and Eve's children before before they had to leave the garden. Now we have to understand this because I don't know what we understand about this. I don't know what your revelation about this is. But He said to Adam and Eve, multiply. He told them that while they were still in the garden. So if they obeyed Him, then there were sons that came from them in a different manner than we perceive today. Yahweh said that there were sons of God created in the same breath. Now that's different than what Adam and Eve were. Now that is where the sons of God came into the earth. That was the fallen ones. that came into the earth. They're different than angels. They are a different type of being, but they are a spirit being. Now the ones that didn't fall, because everybody didn't step from their estate. So the ones that is in the kingdom of heaven, they administrate the arms of the galaxies. And we get to operate with them because we are co-heir with Yahweh in all things. Now I've not engaged much with this, although this is where I'm at in my studies right now, in my engagement in the heavens. This is the court that I'm working with. Because that's the revelation that's exploding within my spirit man, so I begin to understand this court a little bit better. Because you're not allowed access into all the courts immediately. And of course, even if you have allowed access into the courts, you're not going to operate in all the courts immediately. But the Father's desire for us to begin to understand that out of this specific court, there's much that needs to be aligned in the universe. And it's not just the things in the earth that we have governance over. We are co-created, we are in co-creation with Him, and we are co-head with Him. So in your co-head, you understand that you are His right-hand man. His desire is to have you understand how all things work and how to bring all things into full fruition. And it's just a bigger portion of what we've received up to this point. It's a little bit more in our understanding as sons and daughters of Christians, more than just go to church on Wednesday and Sunday, and when you pray, put your hands together and ask Him to forgive your sins and supply your needs. We're beginning to understand there's more to our faith than that. And of course, in your Christian life, you have to at least lead someone to Jesus before you die. Which is all good, it's all good, but there's a little bit more than that. We're beginning to understand the things that He said we would do that's greater than what He did is what we're busy doing right now. It's the hidden things that the world and the church cannot see. But because of sons and daughters working and doing things in the Spirit, that church are exploding in the things that's opening up. So there's much change all over the world because sons and daughters are beginning to operate from out of the kingdom of heaven. Where the Spirit beings walking in creation, aligning and propelling things back into full fruition. Exciting, right? You guys okay? Now that's, like I say, that court's not quite a specialty of mine, but I'm beginning to have more revelation in it. Of course, every time I teach on these courts, it expands because I've engaged them. And like I say, there's no handbook you can go into and get information from. You have to go back in over and over and over again and just sit there for as long as you can to receive. And of course, your soul struggles with the information because there's no record in your DNA for it. And we have the court of the upright, which is the men in white linen, which is the spirits of just men made righteous, who carries and authorizes and mandates your baton that carries the process on the face of the earth. Now you have to remind yourself that if you have died in any way, fashion, or form, you no longer have an inheritance into the earth. Because when your body goes into the ground and it decays, you get a glorified body on the other side. That's understood of it. That's why Moses' body was contentful. You have to understand, this dude, I say this dude with utter respect, he had this incredibly intimate relationship with Yahweh, face-to-face communication for 80 days. Now, that was just the 80 days in the mountain. Then, of course, the Father gives him blueprint, and he gets to build the tent where he spends face-to-face with the Father as many and as often as he wants to. There was a covenant and relationship that most men in the Bible never had. Although Joshua, when Moses came out, Joshua stayed in the tent. You understand that? So, of course, the next generation wants to go deeper, higher, wider. But Moses contend for his body. He said, God, I know I messed up, but you know I actually didn't mess up. I don't want to go into that right now. But he knew he was going to die, and he knew why he was going to die, and he knew when he was going to be born and when he was going to be born, because he had all the information. Because when he didn't know when he was born, he was already an old man, but he was in the mountain, and the Lord gave him all the information from Genesis right through, all the first 5 books of the Bible. He wrote that, so he had a revelation that most of us never even fathomed or had the possibility of thinking possible to carry. Why? Because of that 80 days, spending that with Yahweh, just that infused knowledge poured into him. So that's how he could be with Isaiah, no? With Jesus and Moses on the Mount of Transfiguration with Elijah, because he had his body. Now, if you do not have your body, you have no place in this realm. But what the saints of old are doing, the men in white linen, the cloud of witnesses, they are giving batons and mantles to the sons so that they can be part of this generation. Because the inheritance of what we are carrying as once was DNA of this multitude is different than any other generation's had. We are believing that we are not going to die. We believe that this is a generation that has revelation, understanding of what the human body can take and the capacity that it carries. We're beginning to understand that we are engaging with these beings, and they are helping us and propelling us to engage the things that they could not engage or get to because they passed on. And so we're beginning to understand that everything they do is to propel us. Now we might think, well, if you speak to these beings, you are speaking to the dead. But remember, our God's not a God of the dead. If you are in the kingdom of heaven and you're being engaged, I'm engaging the living. And they are only there to propel me to a deeper, higher, wider place into Him. To give me my revelation regarding who I am, to help me in my task. Now that goes hand in hand with the angelic. They trade into your life as you start making the right choices and to place mantles on your shoulders. I've received mantles from Joshua. I've received mantles from two other saints that I do not know. I received a mantle from a man in my nation that passed away. I received a mantle from an older gentleman that passed away in New Orleans. I never even knew him. I think I met him once. And I received a mantle from Noah. That's what I'm carrying on my shoulders. And I've engaged with these men in the spirit several times. The man that was in New Orleans came to me and said, I no longer have a place at this table. And he shook my hand and he said, you take my place. I don't even, still to this day, I'm not 100% sure what he was talking about. I've engaged it several times. I've spoken to Grant about it. He's given me an idea of where I need to go with what information I have, and it is more than I can tell. The other man that was in my nation that passed away, he said to me, I need you to carry my mantle. He had revelation 20 years ago that the church rejected to such an extent that nobody wanted anything to do with him, but he's carried the revelation that we're walking in today. Wow. And he preached immortality. And of course, you preach immortality and you die, and people that believe that you were going to die anyway just take everything you preached and throw it away. But he lived with cancer for almost 15 years. Victory over victory over victory over victory. And anyway, if you look into his church, he's got wheelchairs and canes and crutches and thousands of them all over. The healings that's taking place. And still, because his legacy carries on through his sons and his daughters and his wife. I have said to him, why don't you give this mantle to your family? And he said, because I want you to carry it in this nation. Wow. Now, they carry their own mantles. How many can understand that? What we're doing right now is, I would say, cutting edge technology. And the church is running away from it. It's like giving a cell phone to Alexander Bell. He's not going to even know what to do with it. Right? He's the guy that invented the telephone, right? I mean, his first idea of a telephone was not a cell phone. Right? It was like not even almost a cell phone. You guys okay? We've got the Court of the Kings. And listen to this. I've touched base on this several times. The Court of Kings are on the earth. It's sons that lives on the earth that have their mountains and their thrones on their mountains. See yourself as a king and understand what that means. A mountain is a sphere of rule. It's a place that you have governance over. So, I know this doesn't always make sense to people, and they're like, what are you talking about? So, up to this point, the Father has given me states in my nation. We've got 9 states. He's given me 9 states in my nation to govern. Now, I don't govern the entire state. I govern sections of the states in what mountain he's given me to occupy. He's done the same in Europe. And it's only a couple of countries because I've been in Belgium, Germany, and Holland. And it's those countries that he's given me sphere of rule in, because in that nation I've done certain things in the spirit. And the United States has given me to this point 26 states that I have sections in that I govern. It's mountains that I sit on. In the spirit I have a mountain that the Father has placed me on with a throne where I'm beginning to establish my sphere of rule. But from out of that mountain, I govern what the Father has given me to govern from out of the kingdom of heaven into creation, to bring alignment to the things that need to fall into place. I know that goes beyond what we perceive as Christians. Well, I'm just a Christian on this side, just wanting to read the Bible and study and meditate and pray for my needs and read something to Jesus and go to church on Wednesdays and Sundays and ask someone to pray for me and feel His power and shake and laugh and cry and pray in tongues. But we understand that there's a little bit more than that, and we have to engage more than that, right? It is the process of maturity from the government of the seat of rest in you, where you have surrendered lordship. So your mountain within the kingdom of heaven is that place where you have given Him every dimension of who you are to rule over. When you've done that in full capacity, you establish your mountain. I would go as far as to say your mansion in the heavens, where you begin to live. Now, many times I would find myself going into my mountain, and I would see, now this mountain is not always in the kingdom of heaven. I don't know exactly how that means, or what that means, or how that works, but I know this for a fact, because I would go into my mountain, and I would see movement in the back of my eye, or in the movement in the back, and I would realize that there's something in my mountain. And then I could go back looking at my gates. I can look at my soul gates, because that's usually where the trouble would come in. The soul gate, something happened in my day, something happened in my family, something shifted, something has unaligned, something has gone wrong somewhere, and I've allowed or given access to something to come in. And when something is in your mountain that shouldn't be there, you're distracted. So you have to deal with that immediately. I don't want to go into too much detail regarding that. Understand, lordship is where you become a lord, because if I give Him full lordship over everything that I am, all of who I am, He becomes Lord of Lords. So for Him to become Lord of Lords, I must give Him lordship, and when He becomes Lord of Lords, I become Lord. Same as King. He's the King of Kings, so I have to give Him kingship so I can become a king. You guys okay? Of course, we understand this mountain is that place of utterly rest in Him. Nothing you do can come out of strive or hard work. When you are overworked in ministry, when you're feeling that everything is just hard work and you're struggling with things, step back into Him and allow Him to pour into you, because you need that rest, that place inside of Him where you live and move and have your fullness. Yeah, the court of fathers. Now, the court of fathers only opens up to you when you have led someone else to maturity. I remember about 3 years ago, I was soaking in one of my classes in New Orleans, and one of my daughters was in that meeting, and as I was in the soaking meeting, she shifted in the spirit to a new level. I could feel it, because immediately I could feel the access shifting me into the court of the fathers. So she reached a level of maturity that allowed me into this court almost immediately. It was incredible. This can be an apostolic position, but not necessarily, because everyone's not apostles, but most of us in this room can lead someone to maturity. It's our responsibility to always. This is the idea, the way it works. The idea is you always have someone that mentors you. Right? That's just logic. You have a spiritual father or mentors, someone that you look up to that can teach you, that can align you, that can equip you. And you need somebody that's equal to you, and that you can engage with and talk to and share with and confess and just be open with. Not that you're not open with everybody, because that's a good idea, right? Then you need somebody that you're busy mentoring, training, teaching, and speaking into. That's almost the basis of our faith. Right? You need to be discipled. You need to have someone to walk next to, and you need to be discipling somebody. Right? In the court of fathers, there's people there like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Melchizedek, and these are men that we can engage in this mountain, or in this court. Wealth comes from being a father in this court, due to responsibility and position. Now you have to understand, just like everything else, I have my own business. How many of you understand? That does not mean that I'm an instant billionaire. It would be really nice if you worked like that, but just because you have your own business doesn't mean you're a billionaire. There's a perspective for you to become a billionaire, but it's going to be a process, first of you to have the right market, to work very hard at it, have the right staff, And of course, when I say staff, people that see your business as their business, that will invest the same amount of energy into it as what you do, because that's how you expand and build, right? Then of course you have to go branches, and it's just a process that you have to go through to become what you've already established in your mind. But it doesn't happen instant. Engaging in this course, nothing that you expect happens immediately, because you have to have revelation of what you're doing and slowly but surely gain the information that you need to begin to establish the things that it gets established from out of these courts. And of course, the Father's desire is to get you to the position that you're meant to be in as a governor of whatever He's placed in your life, so that the finances that you need to be established in your position can be brought to you. Not by manipulation. And we've got the Court of Judges. It's about kingdom government. It is where a high judicial decree are issued from regarding the earth, our solar system, and galaxies. You cannot, listen to this, you cannot be in this court unless you have been in the court of fathers. Because if you lead someone to maturity, you are mature. Now, please don't misunderstand me. There's different levels of maturity. Now, I can be a 12-year-old and be mature for a 12-year-old. But a 12-year-old is not mature enough to handle what a 21-year-old can handle. Even though he could be the most mature 12-year-old, he's still just 12. So I can be at a position as a mature son and have led to someone else to maturity, but I'm not mature. I still have a level of manure in my mature. Right? Everything is about responsibility in this court. A judgment to live and love, not to bring and to bring justice. But you have to understand, the Father does not want to bring judgment to death. Everything that He brings into creation is to propel it in life. That's why sons and daughters have to get to the place in our walk where we get to understand His judgment over us is life. And as one with full governance over creation, when His judgment comes, His judgment goes through me. When His judgment comes through me into creation, everything is judged to life. When His judgment doesn't come through me into creation, it kills and destroys. That's why everything is starting to change now, because sons are busy rising up. In the beginning of the year, I said, in the beginning of I can't remember exactly when, a long time ago, not too long ago, but less than a year ago, I said, this will be the year recorded where the least natural disasters take place. And I said, not because God said, but because sons and daughters will begin to rise up and understand their function in creation. And things will be established in the way that it's supposed to. Now, it will be the beginning and the phase, so things will change from this moment on. And if you've looked from the beginning to the year to now, we've had a phenomenal year. It's just me. I don't know what the other states, even the other states, there's nothing too seriously crazy has gone on. Because sons and daughters begin to understand what we can legislate and what we can take in the courts, and what we can deal with, right? We've got the Court of 70. This is what we call the Celestial Council. Okay, this is where death and life is judged for nations, planets, and for us. And the meeting of the whole process of this starts at the end of February every year. It works in 70-day cycles. It starts with judgment, 70 days of judgment, 70 days of justice. It's actually start with justice, but then judgment. The 70 year of judgment just ended. As far as I can understand, it ended on Tuesday, or it could have changed on Thursday. And just before it closed, a new age opened up. Then you have 70 days of grace, 70 days of mercy. The judgment of this court is not against man, but against demonic powers that has bounded nations. So that has much to do with man, but man doesn't really, at this point, until you have really grown in your position, as a governor, as a celestial being in his full capacity, don't have the right to go in and bring any change. If that makes any sense. But we can, and we will eventually be able to govern from out of that court and bring things into creation as it's originally supposed to be. Because the judgment that comes in has to come from our knowledge of what it means to be judged. And we'll see a lot in the time of judgment and the time of justice. We'll see a lot of things crumbling around the earth. People getting caught here, people being exposed here, this leadership coming to an end, that leadership being birthed, things just happening in nations. And then of course you've got the grace and the mercy side, and it's just the Father's way of governing things into position, but his desire is for the sons to take this over and begin to bring that into completion. Exciting, right? Any other court of the Lord? And I'm going to close with this, because this is the last one. How are you guys doing? This is the Yosod of God's counsel. The counsel of the Lord. This is where you will find the counsels of God, a foundational arm of the Father's desire. Where the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and the Father is in this court, and of course, he wants you to be there with him to handle creation. Now, I remember this was pretty intense for me, and I didn't know at that point that this was the court of the Lord. But I was taken by wisdom into a room. She didn't go into this room. She stopped at the door and she left. I opened and went in. It was this massive, beautiful white room. It was intense. But there was 4 thrones. There was one for the Father, one for Yeshua, one for the Holy Spirit, and then one for the sons. And in this court, but the Father is, he brought me closer to him, and he had me around my neck like this, very gently, and he said, "My son, there's too much for us to do for you to play around the way you are." It was in the very beginning when I just started going to the kingdom, and I wanted to do all kinds of funny things. I had all kinds of weird, crazy things in the Spirit, and he said to me, "There's too much written on your scroll for you to keep on playing. You need to get serious." And then, of course, I tantrumed like a little baby, because I was still a baby, and I still am. And I didn't go back in for 3 weeks. Help us, Jesus. But his desire for us is to understand our position in him, is to govern and co-create with him. To co-govern, to co-heir, to co-create, to be in co-management with him over everything he created. That's why we're the only being created in his image and his likeness. And I really believe that right now, the ecclesia is in a place where his desire for us to begin to see how to function as sons and daughters, and what that means. To begin to go into creation and bring things into position, align things into place, and to push it exactly where it's supposed to be. That's exciting, right? Let's stand. And just remind yourself that the mobile court's a big teaching. It takes a whole hour because there's a lot of information, a bit of protocol. It's a court where there's a judge, there's an advocate, there's an accuser, there's one who testifies with you. They've got the angels, so it's an actual court. These courts in the court of heaven is not courts where there's a judge and an accuser, because the accuser can't go there. It's a place where you sit around people and you discuss what needs to come into fruition, what needs to change, what needs to come into place, what needs to be done regarding the situation that you brought into the court, if that makes any sense. Of course, we need to learn and to grow in the protocol regarding all these things. And Father, we just want to come before your throne right now and just remind ourselves how incredible you are and how amazing you are, and just being in awe of who you are by sitting right at your feet, looking into the magnitude of your glory and your fire, looking into all of who you are, Yah, Hey, Vav, Hey, and understanding that you are more than just the creator of heaven and earth. You are the Father of all creation. You are my Father. You love us. You want to pour into us. You have created us in your image. No other living being has your image but us. And so, Father, you've desired for us to walk with you. You've desired for us to come back into you. And when we go back into you, all these revelations of your courts, of the 7 spirits, of every living being, every living, I mentioned the cities, the different places of residence within your kingdom, the different kingdoms within the kingdom of heaven, Father, we need to begin to understand and engage. So I just pray, Father, that you will take our spirit man, be our spirit, and will begin to overshadow our soul and our body. And just as spirits expand inside of all of the earth, expand into all of who you are, expand into my body, expand into my soul as a spirit being that's consumed and full of your glory and your fire, your presence, your fullness. But with all of that comes that infused knowledge that we carry, Father, that you've poured into us. And we need to be able to bring that to our soul and body so we can begin to understand the things that's happening in the ecclesia right now, the changes that's taking place, the different order that's in flow, so that we can begin to run with what you have and not run from it. Father, we love you, we praise you, and we just thank you for who you are in the name of Yeshua.